Thank you for tuning in to Love in Your Hands with Cynthia Clark, soulmate palmist, spiritual teacher, love coach, author, and speaker. We are sharing stories of love and connection and lessons learned along the way. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to ignite soulmate love fast using an innovative system to help you end loneliness and toxic relationships and elevate your vibrational energy to soulmate love and deeply compatible partners. Get started for free at loveinyourhands.com. And now here's your host, Cynthia Clark.
Hello there, everyone. This is Cynthia Clark, and I am your soulmate palmist and spiritual teacher. You can find me over at loveinyourhands.com if you are looking for long-lasting love. I've created this amazing algorithm that can help you identify your perfect partner and actually how to get there and identify them. So welcome to our segment on, we are doing some hand reading today. It's really exciting. I've got a wonderful guest with me. Her name is Mia Irvin, and she is a pre-law student, and she lives in Flagstaff, Arizona. So welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So yeah, this is fun. I just love bringing in people who are totally new to palmistry because the world of palmistry is such a beautiful place to go to learn about who you really are and who are you most compatible with. So basically your hands can just guide you through your entire life, and it's amazing. So we're gonna just dive right into your hands.
Sounds good.
I'm gonna share my screen for people who are watching on YouTube, and for people just listening, I am going to describe the hands so that you will not miss a thing. Okay. So we've got a beautiful hand here. By the way, which hand do you write with?
Thank you. I'm left-handed.
You're left-handed. Okay, so we are looking at your active hand, your left hand to start with.
Yeah.
And by the way, left-handed people are much less common than right-handed people. I would say only about 10% of the population is left-handed. Which might actually change over time, which is, interesting because it goes back to my generation when we were actually punished if we were not right-handed.
Oh, gosh. Oh, no.
It was pretty sad. I've actually talked to a few left-handed people who were literally beaten, like in school, like they were in like a Catholic school or whatever, and their nurse, the nun or whatever, literally hit their hand, like, you need to use your other hand.
Oh my goodness. I have heard that the left hand is like the devil hand.
Yeah, so unfortunately, that's like totally ridiculous and definitely not the case at all. People will naturally gravitate towards one hand or another if they're allowed to. And so I consider, both hands are actually quite important, and we want to tap into the energy of, we call the active hand, your developing hand. It's going to show more of your outer self, your public self. It can show talents and things like that. And your passive hand, in your case, your right hand, is going to be more of the potentials, more of the subconscious, more of the inner realm or the subconscious realm. And both hands actually do change over time. So when I look at your hand as it sits today, the lines in the hand might actually shift, ebb and flow over time. So that is where our free will comes in, and the choices we make in our life is going to reflect the changes that show up in the palm. Okay, so
cool.
And we can also, I notice you wear a ring on your middle finger on your left hand.
I do have a cup, yeah.
I'm one of those people who wears a lot of rings too.
Yeah. Yes.
So rings actually activate different energies based upon what finger you're putting them on. So
Okay.
I find it interesting that you're putting it on your middle finger because that is your strong finger. Okay. So when we look at the fingers, each one of them represents a different aspect of yourself. And the middle finger represents Saturn, which is the finger of duty and responsibility. Okay, so
Okay.
your hand shape, in fact, we're going to look at your archetype. You have what is known as the justice archetype.
Oh,
Okay.
wow.
Yeah, I know. This is like so funny.
Yeah.
Like I'm in pre-law. I'm like, oh wow, how funny is that?
That's funny. Okay.
Like how appropriate.
Yeah.
Because the energy of the hand. Okay, so your hand shape forms by the time
Mhm.
you're about 6 years old. So
Okay.
when you think about being a little baby to the time you're about 6 years old, you're totally in your subconscious mind, and you are going to be growing into the person that you are today. And by the time you reach about age 6, that archetype or that set of personality traits is going to be embedded in you, and it's going to impact you for the rest of your life. Okay, so you came in, we all actually come in with earthy hands, and the hand shape will change once we get to be about age 6. And in your case, you have developed long fingers and a long rectangular palm. This is known as a water hand. Okay, water hands are the most adaptable of all the hands. So you definitely have an ability to go into different areas of study. You could adapt very well in different ways, and you might actually be interested in multiple things throughout your life, which is totally great. But because we're bringing in that Saturn finger as your strong finger, this is where we get the justice archetype. And a justice archetype, you have an attribute of love, I call this,
Mhm.
that is natural energy that you exude. Okay, so Mia, you exude fairness and diplomacy. Okay, so that
Okay.
Saturn finger brings in that energy of duty and honor, and brings in a strong work ethic. And the water brings in the emotional realm, and it brings in, like, okay, let's take into our account the feelings that we have, the feelings that need to be shared. So, by the way, justice types do make excellent judges, because
Okay.
they can see two sides of a story very equally, and they can validate, and they can kind of pick through what's accurate and what's not. So, um, who is that famous judge that's on TV? Judge Judy, I think is her name.
Yes. Yeah.
She has a hand shape like yours. She's a justice
Okay.
archetype. So it's interesting that it's interesting she chose like TV as her way
Right.
to
Yeah, yeah,
share it,
yeah.
but she actually does have a good, and I don't watch her show or anything, but I've looked at her hand, and I know that she's in the right profession at least. So it's kind of
That's good.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, so your best match, okay, so this is the cool thing too about hands, is once we identify your archetype, we can also identify your soulmate match or your best match. So what we want to bring in is the complementary energy. So that would actually be somebody with short fingers, okay, so just the opposite of your fingers. And the palm, instead of being rectangular like yours is, it would be
Mhm.
shorter, and it would be more of a square palm.
Okay.
Okay, so that is what we call an earth hand. Okay, so an earth hand
Mhm.
grounds the water energy, and you would want somebody with a strong index finger or Jupiter finger. Okay, we call
Okay.
that the emperor archetype. Okay, now why is an emperor so good for you is because they have a strong sense of independence. They can take your fairness and your diplomacy energy, and they can direct it into their domain, and they like to be in charge of things, and they like to be creating something that, you know, like when you think of an emperor, you think of an empire, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
They
Yeah.
create the empires. Okay. So they have that strong energy to create something tangible that is totally within their own domain. So, but what's good about you is you complement each other very well. You can show them, you know, how to not become the dictator, right? When it's out of balance.
Right.
Out of balance is the dictator. And by the way, your out of balance energy would be judgment. So if you become overly judgmental in any one area of your life, that's a kind of a red flag for you to go, okay, why am I judging this so harshly? And it's inviting you to heal it. Okay, so all imbalances really are there to help us heal and grow and evolve. Okay, but you definitely have just, this is what's innate in you, is this sense of fairness. Okay, it's also important for you to stay in your own center and your own balance, because then you can see things again much more clearly. Okay, makes sense?
Yeah.
So do you have any like romantic relationships going on right now, or where are you at with all that?
No, I'm single.
You're
I'm
single.
single.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you looking for love?
I try to keep an open mind. I try not to, not be looking for a relationship or to be looking for a relationship. I just try to, the people who come into my life, whatever they're going to do, they're going to do. And yeah, I try to have an open mind with that kind of stuff.
Okay, perfect. Well, I would recommend that earthy hand shape for you. And it doesn't necessarily need to be the strong index finger. They could have another finger that's a strong finger as well. That'll still be compatible with you. Okay, but that's your best match. You're also going to naturally gravitate towards your own type. So, for example, you may have friends who are other water hands, and you could also date other water hands, but I don't actually recommend that for like a long-term relationship. I recommend it more on like a friend type relationship or a mentor type relationship.
Gotcha. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it doesn't mean it couldn't work, because we could also look at, let's say, your astrology or your Chinese astrology, and then, you know, it can sometimes work. Like my first marriage, I was married for 19 years to somebody who had a similar hand shape as my own. And we were both fire hands. And we worked really well together, which of course is what fire hands can do together. But ultimately, now that I'm remarried, I've got my complementary energy as my husband, and it's just so much easier. And, you know,
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's
nice.
something I recommend anyway for
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's take a look at some other things that we see. Let's just veer over to your other hand. I did notice your archetype was the same on both hands. Again, we've got this long middle finger, and we look at it relative to the other fingers next to it. And again, we've got that long palm. And I noticed you have different rings on this hand.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you're activating your Jupiter finger or your index finger with a ring on the finger, which is power. Okay, so you're trying to gain more power and control subconsciously, because this is your passive hand. And you're also trying to tap into more of your Apollo finger, which is your finger of creativity and also how you present yourself to the world. Okay. So you're trying to show up, you know, this is how I want to be seen. This is how I want to be acknowledged. By the way, justice archetypes tend to be a little bit more on the secretive side, just as their own nature. They're not necessarily, which again, I'm like I so honor you for coming on the show, because you don't necessarily, you know, share all of this stuff with people most of the time. Okay. So that's all good. It's all what it is. People with longer ring fingers tend to be more of the people who show themselves more to the world. Okay, because
Gotcha.
that's
Okay.
Apollo. It's like, look at me. Like if you see,
Mhm.
actors' hands, for example, they will have very long Apollo fingers, generally speaking.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so different types of professions will have different fingers as their strong fingers. So
Mhm.
another thing that we can look at is your heart line. And so on your passive hand, which is the one we're looking at right now, we can see this is your heart line. It represents your emotional flow. It's the uppermost major line of your hands, and it
Mhm.
starts underneath the little finger and it heads towards either the middle finger or it heads towards the index finger. In your case, you've got one that goes clearly over here to your Jupiter finger or your index finger. Okay, this is also a watery heart line. Okay, so you have a lot of water in your hands. Now, this is a giving heart line, by the way. The challenge with this is you got to make sure you're not giving too much. Okay,
Gotcha.
because a giving person like yourself sometimes can give too much. And then, and the reason why I can see that might stress you out a little bit is you've got a break right here in your heart line.
Gotcha.
And this is actually part of your heart line right underneath your middle finger. And it's basically saying, well, what about me? Don't forget about me. Okay. So don't give too much.
Okay.
And yet you do need to nurture someone or something. So, it's good for you. I would actually recommend a pet for you. I don't know if you have one, but it might be good for you.
Don't. Okay.
Might want to get a dog or something.
Oh, I'd love to get a dog.
Yeah, that could be a lot of fun. So,
Yeah.
yeah, but anyway, so your best match, again, we can identify who is the very best person for you, would be somebody with a heart line that is complementary to water, which would be earth. So the
Okay.
heart line would just come straight out of the side here, and it would stop underneath the middle finger. That would be your very best match. So that would actually be the match. I think about my parents when I think of this match, because my parents were married for like 50 years before my dad died last year.
Well,
And
I'm sorry to hear that.
yeah, it's okay. He's okay. I still like feel him sometimes when I do my
Oh,
work. But
that's beautiful.
but my parents had very complementary heart lines, and I think that was one of the reasons why they stayed together for so long. And my mom is water, like you, and my dad was earth, and it worked really well, because it's again, what happens is the person. So the traits of the person who has this will be somebody who they can absorb what you want to share with them. They will take it in, but they won't judge it. They will take it in, but they won't feel like there's something wrong with you. You know what
Right.
I mean? Because you're supposed to be
Yeah.
emotional. That's your nature. That's your watery nature. And an earth person, they can handle that without it feeling draining to them.
Mhm.
That's the kind of person you need. And they tend to be sort of kind of the strong silent type. So, if you're drawn to that kind of person, that's a good person for you to get to know better, because they're going to be very, they might seem a little mysterious at first, but
Mhm.
ultimately they're going to be very loyal. And so
Gotcha.
if you get to know them, and the same with an emperor, they don't have time to waste on frivolous relationships. That is totally not their thing. But
Right.
if they let you into their inner world, then you probably have somebody that you could depend on forever for anything. That's the
Oh.
beautiful side of an emperor. And I actually had an emperor who was my editor for my first book. And she was so great, because she could just see so clearly what it is I was trying to express, and she could help me kind of solidify
Oh.
it.
Yeah.
It
That's
was awesome.
awesome.
Yeah, it was so awesome. I'm so grateful to have known an emperor.
Right.
you
Right.
know? But it's just so cool to get to know somebody from this perspective of their archetype is so helpful, because then you can really understand, well, what is it that they're contributing to the relationship? And emperor types can help contribute the energy of leadership and how to direct your fairness energy. So it really is beautiful. Okay, now I did want to point out a couple of things that I'm noticing too with your hand. You do have a bunch of little lines over here in what we call your Luna section. Okay, Luna, this is, by the way, if you want to find this, people who are listening, it's the lower part of your hand and it's opposite your thumb. So it's as far away from your thumb as you can get towards the wrist. Okay, so what I'm seeing here is a bunch of horizontal lines which represent restless energy. Okay, so I'm not sure like why you're so restless, but there's there's some restless energy. Maybe it's because you're young. Okay, but that's something to pay attention to, and make sure that you validate your own feelings.
Okay.
Because that's very, very important for you. And if we go back to your other hand, I was also noticing a little bit of stress in your heart line on this hand too. Okay, you can see here is your heart line kind of coming out, and then it breaks right under Apollo. Okay, and then it breaks again, just like we saw on the original, on your other hand, in the same spot. So there definitely is some emotional, I would consider this emotional stress, and it could have to do with that restless energy in Luna. And Luna, by the way, also represents your receiving, your ability to receive. So you can see, by the way, the quality of your giving versus receiving. Okay, so if you look at Venus, which is right next to your thumb, it's your thumb ball. This is your giving energy. Okay, now you see it should be the biggest section of your hand, like that's normal. But we want to make sure that Luna is also developed. Okay, so that's because that's your receiving energy. Okay, by the way, your best match will be somewhat similar in these areas. Hopefully, similar to you. But yeah, I'm seeing a little bit of stress maybe in your receiving. Okay, so make sure could be that you're studying too much or something. I'm not sure, but
Okay.
There's a little bit of stress there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Another thing to look at in terms of relationships is we do have your affection line showing up. So some people want to know, is there a relationship in the realm of possibility or not? This is the area that we look at, which is below the little finger. And it is the little horizontal lines that come out of just underneath the little finger. Okay, so we do see an affection line right here. And I would say that would represent a significant relationship in your future, since it sounds like you're not currently in one. And that's where you can identify it. Okay, now it does look to me like you're open to a relationship if one happens to appear, which is nice. Not everybody is ready for that. Let's check both hands on this just to make sure. But yeah, this is where we look, is the affection line. So yeah, you do have a nice affection line here as well. Okay, so so that's the good news, that there definitely is. I do see a relationship on the board, so to speak.
Gotcha.
But of course, these lines can change over time. And it's good actually to just kind of keep an eye on them and see what's going on. All right.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. But so do you have any questions for me regarding your hands? Anything you want to know?
Not right now. I can't think of anything right now.
Okay. We could also pull a card if you're interested in maybe getting a message from the cards. I have this relationship deck that I sometimes use. It's kind of fun.
Yeah, sure.
Why don't
Why
we do
not?
that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Because sometimes that'll also tell me there's so much to look at in your hands. I don't necessarily know what to point out, especially if you don't have a question. So then we can just pull a card and just see what the message is.
That's
The
right.
star is the card coming up for you. Okay. So let me point out this beautiful lady. So she is here. Actually, I'll do a stop share for a second so people can see a little bit bigger.
Okay.
So the star is another archetype. It's actually a combination of water element, which is your primary element, and air element, which we didn't look at your secondary element, but we could take a quick look at it really quick. That would be in the type of lines that you have. Okay. So some people will have very deep set lines, and other people will have actually very shallow lines, delicate lines. I would actually say that your lines are also water. So you're double water. Okay. So you're what we would call the pure type. Okay. Pure water type. Okay. So yeah. So anyway, let me read what this card says. Potential for your dreams to be realized. Make a wish. This card represents the archetype of the star. Hopes and dreams can be realized. Take the time to make a wish and look for opportunities. They are all around you. Make sure also to develop your talents and use them. Okay, so yeah, you definitely have that justice archetype talent. You can see things fairly and clearly, and you can help to balance out other people who are out of balance. That's definitely what your talent, what your innate talents are. Let me see if there's anything else as far as talents go, because there's actually a ton of different talent markers that can show up in your hands. And sometimes I just didn't see them or didn't, like maybe I should look again. Because there's about 30 different talent markers that can show up. And they definitely represent something that wants to be used. Okay, so what I am noticing with you is you do have a pretty clear Mercury line. Looks like it's pretty well developed on this hand, your right hand, meaning a potential. Okay, Mercury represent the Mercury line. Okay, so this is a diagonal line that comes down from the Mercury finger and it heads towards the middle part of your palm. And it represents listening to your inner voice. So it's an intuition talent. Okay, now again, going back to your archetype, when you are in balance emotionally, you will have a very clear intuitive, I would call it clairsentience, clear feeling, because you're tied in with feelings. Okay, so you're going to feel if something is right or wrong, good or bad. Okay, that is where your talent is going to come from. All right. So hopefully that makes sense to you. And it's something you can develop. So tapping in, because see, if we look at it here on your other hand, it says, yep, we got to choose that. Okay, because I'm not seeing a Mercury line at all on this hand. Okay, so it's showing up as a potential when it's on the passive hand. Okay, so this is something you could clearly develop. Just checking in with your feelings, checking in with, what message can I get from my feelings today? Or if something doesn't seem right, it's like, well, what's the undercurrent behind it, underneath it? Saturn is a bit of a detective. That's another thing that you can realize about yourself. You investigate things, and you're not afraid to do the work. Okay, this is like almost like the research finger You can think of it like that. It's like, well, let's dig in some more.
Mm-hmm.
Let's discover more facts. Let's see what's going on. Okay. So I encourage you to dig deeper for the truth and then to check back in with your own feelings and see what it says. Okay. So yeah, so that's the star.
Okay, I'll take it. Yeah.
It's a beautiful card, by the way. I consider it one of the nicest cards in the deck, because it really does show that you can, direct your own energy and you can create the life that you want. So if you want to find that Emperor archetype soulmate match, it totally is available for you. And you can throw it out there.
Okay.
So
that's good news, I guess.
Yeah, it is. So wrapping up, do you have any other questions or comments?
No, this was really cool. That's crazy that it was like the Justice archetype. I still can't. That's pretty cool.
It's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So my message, of course, to everyone is that life has more meaning when it is shared. So if you're looking for your soulmate match, you've got to know that your soulmate match is also looking for you. And just go to loveinyourhands.com if you are interested in learning more and actually potentially finding that beautiful person who's looking for you. So thanks for joining us today, and I can't wait to connect with you again very soon.
Yeah. Thank you for listening to Love in Your Hands. Please rate, review, and subscribe to show your support. Have a question for Cynthia? Just post a comment. This podcast is sponsored by loveinyourhands.com, the place to find soulmate love fast. Start your free Soul Connection membership today, upload your hand photo, discover your relationship archetype, and start finding soulmate matches. Just go to loveinyourhands.com to get started.